As we all know, Democrats have a nasty habit of trying to take credit for things Republicans did, while at the same time laying blame on Republicans for what Democrats did. And when Democrats get caught lying about what they try to take credit for and passing blame, they try to say that the parties switch sides. And when they get busted with that lie, they try to say that the ideology switched side. Are you starting to see a pattern here?
I think what's happening. Propaganda.
If you see a pattern here because there's a meme going around that poses the same question as it asserts a list of lies. And yes, I do see a pattern. Let's look at this list posted by another slander-happy liberal named Steve Marmel. First lie: conservatives oppose the American Revolution. Liberals won. So conservatives oppose the American Revolutionary War and liberals won it? Liberals, the ones who love to flash that bumper sticker that says war is not the answer, or war doesn't decide who's right, only who's left, or coexist, or make love not war, who accuse conservatives of being bloodthirsty warmongers, yet all of a sudden these liberals who pride themselves as pacifists are bragging about winning a war and accusing the battle-hungry conservatives of being against it? Okay, see, you liberals need to understand that being a liberal and a liberator are two totally different things. Next, conservatives supported slavery, liberals won. Classic prime example of the cowardice of Democrats. When it's revealed that Democrats are the ones who represented the Confederacy, and mind you, there's also the Northern Democrats who wanted to keep slavery legal, but did not agree with secession. The left-wingers today try to throw people off the scent of the Democrat slave-demanding history by saying it was conservatives so as to confuse people and associate this stigma with Republicans. And the reason why it's so very, very, very easy for left-wingers to make that association of conservatives with Republicans is very simple. Because the Republican platform was founded on conservative interpretation of the Constitution anyway. The Democrat Party always had a liberal interpretation of it. That's a big part of why it was so easy for them to claim the term liberal. If you take liberties with the Constitution, you will conclude that it's okay to force someone to be your property. That is a very liberal interpretation of the Constitution, and that's exactly what Democrats did. They took the liberty to pull some wild justification for slavery out of their donkey hole that was totally antithetical to the Constitution. Meanwhile, it was the Republicans who viewed the Constitution very conservatively and kept to what the Constitution says. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's when liberals try to squirm out of it and try to downplay Lincoln as a Republican and say that Lincoln didn't care about freeing the slaves anyway, and the war wasn't about freeing the slaves. Oh, and I'll remind those self-righteous pacifist liberals who say that war is not the answer while trying to claim Lincoln as a liberal. For Lincoln, war was the answer, whatever you think the war was over. But I offer this, even Karl Marx knew that the Civil War was about slavery. He even sent Lincoln a letter congratulating him on the war to end slavery. Karl Marx was very zealous about ending the exploitation of laborers. The problem with Marx, though, was that he was so overzealous about it that his worldview puts exploitation power in the hands of the state. And on a side note, I'm really disappointed that people, including Republicans, has asked me if this is Karl Marx on my shirt. As long as I've been doing Christian conservative pro-capitalism Republican commentary, you look at this shirt and Karl Marx is the guy that comes into your mind? Really? Not Frederick Douglass? The guy who said, I am a dyed-in-the-wool Republican whose image is on this Republican shirt? And you go with Karl Marx? Anyway, that same liberal interpretation of the Constitution with Democrats exists today. They took liberties to say it's okay to force someone to be their property. By doing what? Disqualifying their personhood. And Democrats do that today. Insist that the Constitution doesn't consider blacks human. You'll often hear them try to assert that the Constitution says that blacks are 3/5 human. And the Constitution doesn't say that at all. They use that excuse to justify slavery. Now they use it today to make blacks angry and demanding of justice. And it instigates the black community to be spiteful of the Constitution. And with that, the Democrats are able to put a new kind of shackle on blacks. Democrats twisted the Constitution to put blacks in chains. And the Democrats twist the Constitution today to get blacks to put themselves in chains. And just as Democrats took the liberty to disqualify the personhood of blacks to justify making them property to do with them as they please, Democrats take liberties today to do the same thing and disqualify the personhood of the child in the womb and insist that it's the female's property to kill it if it so pleases her. All right, let's take the next statement on this meme. Conservatives oppose blacks and women's voting. Liberals won. Okay, we've already established that liberals are those who take liberties with the Constitution to justify depriving people of their rights. They did it back then, and they do it today. If you take liberties with the Constitution, you can justify the position that women can't vote. The Constitution doesn't say that women can't vote. But Democrats took the liberty to insist that it does, because the Constitution didn't mention the word women. So Democrats persisted with the idea that the Constitution was male-centric and used that to keep women from voting. Nowadays, Democrats do the same with females that they do with blacks. Democrats pander to feminists by instigating that the Constitution is anti-woman, and feminists end up being happy to vote for a party that represents what is antithetical to the Constitution. Not realizing that out of spite, they're giving the state the power to infringe upon our God-given rights. But the Republicans who interpret the Constitution conservatively were the allies of the women's suffragist movement. The Republican Party was founded on abolition. And the suffragists were mostly abolitionists, and they allied with Republicans. It was with Republican support that the right to vote for women was affirmed, because Republicans interpret the Constitution conservatively and did not see anywhere in the Constitution that women cannot vote. Democrats, on the other hand, who make liberal interpretations of the Constitution, took liberties and assumed that since the Constitution doesn't specifically say women, then they don't have rights, which means women can be treated as property. But Republicans with conservative interpretation kept to what the founding document said. All men are created equal. Not all men are equal. Not all men are born equal, but created equal, which means your God-given rights are in effect upon your creation. And during that time, they didn't know whether you were a male or a female in the womb. But Republicans conservatively kept to what the Constitution says. So whatever gender was in that womb, it didn't matter. It was a creation and created equal with certain inalienable rights that could not be taken away upon being born and discovering she's a girl. Oh, it's a girl. Well, she'll never be able to vote or hold office. But Republicans didn't see it that way. Democrats did. That's why upon your creation, you have rights that cannot be taken away. So when a kid is born and revealed that it's a female, you can't deprive her of her God-given rights. And we've seen some examples of that in some other countries, where gendercide is in effect where girls are targeted for abortion. And the sad irony is that feminists are more interested in their right to abort kids than they are protecting the rights of girls to live. And on a side note, upon our creation, we all basically start off as female, which I reckon means women are granted God-given rights before men are. Ladies first. Next, conservatives oppose child labor laws. Liberals won. Once again, Democrats try to throw people off their evil scent by switching labels to conservative. First up, the Democrats are already busted for slavery and for being cowards by trying to take that KKK hood off of theirs and pulling it over your eyes backwards so you can't see while they blame conservatives for Democrat evils. But since we know that Democrats were the party that wanted slavery, well, that means that a lot of those slaves were children. Don't let Democrats give you some crap that they were the champions for child labor laws by trying to say it was conservatives who opposed child labor laws. Democrats were the ones who were forcing child slaves into labor. Democrats were the ones who made liberal interpretations of the Constitution to deprive kids of their right to liberty, which also included the liberty to learn how to read and be educated. Democrats were the party of child labor. But here they are trying to hoodwink people by saying it was conservatives, like conservative is a dirty word. But liberalism works on people who don't think. To be a conservative with our Constitution is to keep and maintain the protection of our God-given rights so we can keep and enjoy our republic. To a liberal, it means to exploit our freedoms and enjoy them at the forced expense of someone else because you feel entitled to do so. And it wasn't really about conservatives opposing child labor laws. It was the unions, because the unions didn't want to have to compete with children who could be paid a lower wage, just like the unions didn't want blacks or the Chinese to be hired because they didn't want to compete with the wages they would work for. And it was the Democrats that got into bed with the unions a long time ago because they were happy to see white men get paying jobs before blacks or Chinese. They hated that so much that they'd even give an Irishman a job, and they hated Irish people. Does Nina come to mind? The Irish were treated horribly, and the Irish are a big part of why the union was started. And for good reason the union was started. But just like anything else good, the Democrats co-opted and ruined it. I talk about this stuff in my audio book, Weapon of Vast Destruction. I talk about a lot of stuff in that book. Okay, next line. Conservatives oppose the 40-hour work week and the 8-hour work day. Liberals won. Okay, well, what did you win? To date, you've won a weak economy, extended unemployment benefits, increased in the cost of living, and people working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet, while you thought it was cruel to make people work more than 40 hours. Now I'm hearing liberals want to reduce it to 30 hours a week, and I reckon liberals will want an increase in pay with the decrease in hours. You liberals are masters at ruining economies. I still don't get how liberals go on and on and on about how they're entitled to work, yet want to work less, or complain about not being paid enough on their job, but will go on strike for less money. What's even more strange is even though they feel entitled to work, they oppose right-to-work states, or your freedom to work without having to join a union. Union workers totally contradict themselves. They think they're out there making sure that people are entitled to work while imposing the conditions that make it harder for people to make ends meet. And it's about at this point where Democrats implemented the term liberal for themselves and manipulated its meaning to be associated with diversity and social justice, equality, etc. All the things Democrats want to be known for today, all the while pushing policies that are divisive, damaging to the dynamic of equality, and they think we get justice by being unjust to others. They successfully deem themselves liberal by stigmatizing the term conservative and associate the term conservative with Christianity. After all, most of those Democrat bigots consider themselves Christians. Calling yourself a Christian does not make you a conservative. Democrats weren't interested in what God wanted. They were interested in using the authority of God to get what they wanted. That is what happens with liberal interpretations of the Bible. But the actual conservative Christians took the Democrats to task over this and set the record straight. And since the Democrats can't use the word of God the way they used to, now they try to get rid of God. Separation of church and state, and pushing evolution and whatnot to affirm the Bible is invalid. Throwing hissy fits over the nativity scene, attacking prayer in the military, and yanking out military chaplains. You get the point. Next. Conservatives oppose unemployment insurance. Again, I gotta ask liberals who did not win at throwing me off your scent of trying to do your liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat switchy game. What did you win? How are you gonna brag about extended unemployment benefits? You can't brag about extended unemployment insurance without bragging about the fact that a person doesn't have a job and gets to enjoy getting paid for not having a job for that much longer. Good job. And again, I gotta ask, if Democrats have blessed us with such a job-rich economy, why would we need extended unemployment insurance? That's contributing to the weakening of our economy. It's comical and tragic that liberals think that they're winners. Next, conservatives oppose workers' compensation, liberals won. Well, what did you win? A growing litigious slip and fall society with a bunch of ambulance-chasing lawyers and fraudulent workers' comp claims? Conservatives aren't against workers' compensation. What we're against is liberal policies that make businesses vulnerable to fraud and unaccountable negligence on the part of the employee. Are there instances where safety is lax on the employer? Yep. And I'll be the first to say that safety should be the first priority of any business. But liberal policies void the worker of having any responsibility of common sense. And if they operate in an unsafe manner, the company is liable. And that's wrong. Next line. Conservatives oppose compulsory education. Liberals won. Actually, what conservatives oppose is compulsory indoctrination. Liberals have this crazy notion that just because we don't agree with their public education system, that means we don't want people to be educated. No, we don't want to be mandated to be educated by the state. The state that uses children to impose more oppressive policies in the name of the children and demands more taxes in the name of the children and brainwashes children to grow up with the idea that it's in the people's best interest to give more power to the state. And being that the state is becoming more burdensome, I can see that our apprehensions about compulsory state-run education is quite valid. If liberals want to point the finger about opposing things, well, here's a big finger in your face for opposing school choice. But Democrats don't like private schools because they want that money for the state. What's even more strange is that many of these Democrats beat their chests so much for compulsory education in public schools while they send their kids to private schools. Next, conservatives oppose Social Security, and liberals won. Well, what did you win? You won decades of people reaching their senior citizen years worried that their Social Security money is going to be gone. Because deep down, pretty much everybody knows that if your retirement is dependent on another person paying into it and a government that borrows as liberally as it taxes and spends, you're not going to feel secure about Social Security, as opposed to you taking the responsibility to buy into your own retirement that nobody else was forced to pay into. And this crazy idea that the government has a trust fund specifically made for you that they never dip into is delusional. However, people are still getting their SSI checks. Meanwhile, we're trillions deep in debt and deficit, part of which is due to forcing people into paying into someone else's retirement. And liberal government greed has gotten so bad that they've taken the liberty of taking that money from generations that hadn't even been born yet to pay for Social Security. But conservatives are evil because we say, yeah, you want money for your retirement? Save some. But no, we're forced to let the government take some of it and save it. And hasn't our liberal government proven to be so efficient at saving our economy? The Democrats got you afraid of Republicans because we say invest in your own retirement. Meanwhile, the liberal government of Democrats push for more taxing, spending, and borrowing, the very things that jeopardize Social Security. Actually, it's done more than jeopardized it. It's already destroyed it. Your Social Security is already gone. That's why your great-grandkids are going to be taxed rotten to pay for it. And I so very much appreciate the greatest generation for beating back socialistic and communistic factions overseas. But after beating them, why did you vote in the policies of the countries we were at war with over here? Y'all didn't make the connection of Social Security and socialism? Next, conservatives oppose Medicare. Liberals won. Well, what did you win? Another step closer to socialized healthcare? The kind of healthcare that gives more power to the state that people in other countries end up risking their lives to leave? Yeah, let's put the lives of senior citizens in the hands of the state, who ultimately will be deciding if they're worth treating or not. Next, conservatives oppose the Affordable Care Act. Liberals won. Well, what did you win? You want insurance that's so affordable that you have to offer financial assistance for people to pay for it at the taxpayer's expense. You've made it so affordable that it would be just a crime if people don't take advantage of such affordable prices. That's why you're going to fine people for it who don't sign up. The best way to get affordable insurance is to let the companies compete and stop forcing them into monopolies with all your regulations, which you then use to stigmatize insurance companies for being monopolies. If you liberals hate monopolies so much, why would you want the government to be the coverage monopoly? If you're so pro-choice, why are you so opposed to there being more choices for health insurance? The more insurance companies you allow to compete in the market, especially across state lines, the greater chance you'll find an insurance company that will cover you, even with a pre-existing condition. Because you're off your rocker if you think that the government will never say, yeah, we're not going to cover any more of your treatment. I'm Alfonso Rachel with Zonation, and to this gloaty liberal with this winning list of his, this list has about as much win in it as a dude getting drunk and bragging about scoring with his drunk sister. Yeah, you may have scored a home run, but you're still a loser. No win there. Y'all didn't make the connection of Social Security and socialism?